This is a Fox News alert. I'm Bret Baier. We're coming to you live tonight from Orlando, Florida. 30 minutes from now, we will have a debate between the top two candidates for the Republican gubernatorial nomination here. But first, a deadly shooting in a newsroom in Annapolis, Maryland. It happened this afternoon. Officials now say 5 people have been killed, many more injured, and a suspect is in custody. Correspondent Kristen Fisher has been on the scene. She's there now with what's being called one of the deadliest attacks on journalists in U.S. history. Good evening, Kristen.
Good evening, Bret. Just a horrible day. 5 dead. We're hearing at least 7 injured, possibly more, and some of the injured are wounded very gravely. This all started around 2:30, 2:45 this afternoon, and it happened inside the office of a building that houses the Capital Gazette. It is a local newspaper here. It's one of the oldest newspapers in the country, owned by the Baltimore Sun. About 50 employees. Unclear exactly how many people were inside that particular office at the time, but there were about 170 inside the building where this took place, and that's the building that's just behind me. You can see it, the brown brick. I'm not sure if you can see the numbers, 888 on the side. That's where this gunman walked in. We're told by the building manager that it had hardly any security. He then went to the front door of the Capital Gazette and opened fire with what police say was a long gun. There are some witnesses who have said it was a shotgun, but police have not confirmed that. He then opened fire, and inside the newsroom at that moment was the newspaper's crime and courts reporter, obviously the person that deals with these kinds of incidents all the time. He jumped underneath his desk, hid under his desk. Shortly after, he then tweeted about what happened, and I want to read you just a little bit of what he said. In one tweet, he said, "The gunman shot through the glass door to the office and opened fire on multiple employees. Can't say much more and don't want to declare anyone dead, but it's bad." He then said, "There's nothing more terrifying than hearing multiple people get shot while you're under your desk, and then you hear the gunman reload." Now, it's unclear if that gunman did reload. We do know that he did not engage with the police that first responded to the scene, and their response was super fast. They were on the scene within 60 seconds. As for the gunman himself, he is in custody. He's being questioned now. The lieutenant on the scene just took some questions about it at a press conference. Here's what he said. Here is all we know about the gunman.
I can confirm that we have the suspect in custody. They're currently interviewing him right now. We don't have an identification on him yet. We do know he's a white male, adult male, and the gun that was used is described as a long gun.
Now, as I mentioned, the response here was just ridiculously fast, 60 seconds. I'm not even sure how that's possible. But just a few moments ago, the governor and the lieutenant were praising the first responders who were able to get here and keep this awful event from being even more deadly. Listen here.
We were called to 888 Bestgate Road in Annapolis for a report of an active shooter inside a building. Once we arrived, our officers very quickly secured that building.
There are 5 fatalities that we know of. There are several other persons that are gravely injured.
The thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families, and I want to thank the law enforcement professionals who responded. Our emergency response team they did an incredible job. They're still doing the job right now, but the fact that they responded within 60 seconds, I want to give serious praise to Anne Arundel County and the city of Annapolis for their response. And we were here with the state agencies to back them up. We have federal agencies. It's a tragic situation.
And it's difficult to overstate just how huge the police presence is here. We've got helicopters, we have bomb squads, we have, I mean, literally dozens of patrol cars. Right now what's happening is, investigators are going in and they're going to begin the very long process of combing through this very large crime scene. As for the witnesses, they have been taken just across the parking lot, essentially, to the Anne Arundel County Mall. They're reuniting with their families inside the Lord and Taylor there, and that's also where police are interviewing them. And I just want to speak very briefly about something that we've heard that has taken place. These law enforcement, the Anne Arundel County, they had just held a active shooter training drill 1 week ago. Just 1 week they were practicing for something like this to take place. Now it has, and they were here within 60 seconds. No doubt that saved a ton of lives tonight, Bret.
Kristen Fisher live in Annapolis. Kristen, thank you. 60 seconds, amazing time. We'll head back for any breaking details there on the scene. Meantime, New York police say they have deployed counterterrorism teams to media organizations in and around the city. NYPD says the move is not based on specific threat information, but rather out of an abundance of caution. We will have more on the shooting later and with the panel, and we'll head back, as I said, to the scene if there's new information. Meantime, more news today. In Washington, the head of the FBI and the number 2 official at the Justice Department participated in a sometimes contentious public hearing before the House Judiciary Committee. They were confronted again with evidence of anti-Trump bias and a lot of questions. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is on Capitol Hill tonight.
Russia isn't being hurt by this investigation right now. We are.
The ripple effect of the special counsel probe dominated the hearing.
Whatever you got, finish it the hell up, because this country is being torn apart.
We are not going to do our investigation subject to any political influence by either side.
The FBI's alleged use of confidential sources to gather intelligence about Trump campaign aides drew fireworks.
I'm not keeping any information from Congress.
In a few minutes, Mr. Rosenstein, I think the House of Representatives is going to say something different.
I don't believe that's what they're going to say, and if they do, they'll be mistaken.
As the hearing unfolded by a vote of 226 to 183, the House passed a non-binding resolution calling on Rosenstein to provide withheld documents under congressional subpoena.
Or do you believe that you have the ability to be above the law, something the American people do not?
No, sir, I do not have the ability.
Good.
For Republicans, there were other frustrations.
So you won't say to this committee whether or not you even read the document you signed that authorized spying on people associated with the Trump campaign?
Well, I dispute your characterization of what that FISA is about, sir.
On allegations documented to the House General Counsel, first reported by Fox News, that Rosenstein threatened congressional investigators over the records requests.
Who are we supposed to believe? Staff members who we've worked with, who've never misled us, or you guys who we've caught hiding information from us, who tell a witness not to answer our questions? Who are we supposed to believe? The Department of Justice.
Me because I'm telling the truth and I'm under oath. And if you want to put somebody else under oath and they have something different,
I know these staff members.
Respond.
Democrats defended the Republican-appointed witnesses.
Am I correct that each of you were appointed President Trump? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Wright, are you one of those 13 angry Democrats that my Republican colleagues keep referring to?
I do not consider myself an angry Democrat. You can be quite confident.
Are you a Democrat? Mr. Rosenstein, are you a Democrat?
I'm not a Democrat and I'm not angry.
The deadline for the non-binding House resolution is July 6th. Lawmakers return the following week. The FBI and Justice Department continued to cite the need to protect sources and methods, as well as the ongoing Russia investigation. Brett.
Catherine Harris live on Capitol Hill. Catherine, thanks. President Trump has been receiving briefings on the Annapolis shooting this afternoon. This incident comes on a day that featured big news about another summit. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts reports on the President's Day.
Aboard Air Force One this afternoon, President Trump tweeted about the Annapolis shooting. "My thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families," he said. "Thank you to all the first responders who are currently on the scene." White House officials said the FBI, ATF, and other federal agencies are being made available for the investigation. The president was on his way back to Washington from Wisconsin, where he helped break ground at a new 20 million square foot Foxconn plant that will create thousands of high-tech jobs.
Today we're seeing the results of the pro-American agenda, America first.
But the bigger issue on the president's mind, how to replace departing Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy.
When I ran for president, I started hearing, outside of obviously defense and all of that, the most important decision a president can make is the picking of United States Supreme Court justices.
President Trump says he will pick a nominee from a list of 25 conservative judges he published last year. Unlike his first nomination, Judge Gorsuch, which maintained the status quo, this pick will solidify a 5-4 conservative majority at the court for years to come.
We had a fantastic choice with Justice Gorsuch. Very proud of it, doing a fantastic job. And we're going to try and do just as good. So we're going to start working on that process. We've already started. And hopefully we're going to make you very proud.
As contentious as this nomination will be, the next vacancy could move the court to a 6-3 conservative majority. At a rally in Fargo, North Dakota last night, President Trump said control of the Senate is a crucial issue in the November election.
Democrats want judges who will rewrite the Constitution any way they want to do it and take away your Second Amendment, erase your borders, throw open the jailhouse doors, and destroy your freedoms. We must elect more Republicans. We have to do that.
With his summit with Vladimir Putin looming, President Trump again appeared to throw Russia a bone, tweeting this morning, Russia continues to say they had nothing to do with meddling in our election. The statement contradicted the findings of U.S. intelligence, even contradicted what President Trump has said in the past.
As far as hacking, I think it was Russia, but I think we also get hacked by other countries and other people.
The move may have been aimed at building confidence with Russia ahead of the summit, as he did with North Korea. Russia is hoping the meeting will yield positive results.
I think that primarily it will be devoted to the state of our bilateral relations. We desire to be much better, if I put it very mildly.
President Trump will meet with Putin in Helsinki, Finland on July the 16th. Helsinki is a familiar location for U.S.-Russia summits. That's where President Bush 41 met with Mikhail Gorbachev in 1990 and where President Clinton met with Boris Yeltsin in 1997. Bret?
John, we've been around this block before, but a new round of stories about White House Chief of Staff John Kelly stepping down, some say in a matter of weeks. What do we know?
Yet again, rumors have been circulating for days here. Some outside advisors that I spoke with said they believe that John Kelly will step down either shortly after his one-year anniversary at the end of July or maybe even before that. We're told that the president is considering his OMB director, Mick Mulvaney, or Nick Ayers, who is the vice president's chief of staff, to replace him. But I ran this by friends of John Kelly. They say he has no intention of stepping down, going anywhere, hasn't even spoken about it, and talking about it, quoting the president on Air Force One. The deputy press secretary, Lindsay Walters, said the president says the story is not true. Fake news. Bret?
John Roberts, live on the North Lawn. John, thanks. Today, the House approved a $675 billion military spending bill. It includes a 2.6% pay raise for the military. The bill goes to the Senate now, where the Appropriations Committee approved a similar measure this week. On the markets, the Dow finished the day up 98. The S&P 500 rose 17. The Nasdaq jumped 59. First Lady Melania Trump visited a pair of immigrant housing facilities today in Arizona. She first arrived in Tucson, visiting with border authorities there. Later, she went to Phoenix, where she met with about 24 protesters as well, who propped up a large inflatable of President Trump cloaked in a KKK robe. Meantime, Vice President Mike Pence is in Central America, bringing millions in U.S. aid to a region that's contributing, obviously, to the immigration crisis in the U.S. The Vice President meeting with Ecuador's president and encouraging him to hold a firm line against neighboring Venezuela, which is experiencing a political and economic crisis we've covered many times here on Special Report. Now to why we're here in Orlando. Tonight's debate. It features two self-described conservatives who want to align with President Trump, but only one of them has his official seal of approval. Correspondent Peter Ducey sets up tonight's event.
Millions of Americans aspire to live in Florida someday, and they're a big focus of the frontrunner to become the Republican nominee for Governor, Adam Putnam.
Let's continue to make the most of the 1,000 new people a day who are moving to Florida from high-tax, high-bureaucracy states.
Putnam, the agriculture commissioner, built a double-digit lead in this primary, airing ads like this.
Our kids should be career-ready, not debt-ridden. College is not the only path to success, and it's okay to say it.
He'll be joined on stage by Congressman Ron DeSantis, who started his day in D.C.
Seems like you should be recused from this more so than Jeff Sessions.
Hearings like that attract a lot of attention outside of Florida, which Putnam is trying to exploit.
I am proud that we have more donors to my campaign who are from Florida.
DeSantis canceled the scheduled interview today. His campaign says, unlike Adam Putnam, Ron DeSantis was in D.C. doing the job the voters elected him to do by holding the DOJ and FBI accountable. DeSantis' campaign's focus has been promoting a very high-profile endorsement.
Backed by the big man himself, President Trump says Ron DeSantis is a, quote, brilliant leader.
Recent presidential elections have been decided by this swing state, and GOP GOP officials see tonight as a 2020 kickoff.
It's much easier to campaign in the state if you're Republican president, if you have a Republican governor. While we are looking to keep the governor's mansion, we know that this election will set up President Trump for his re-election in 2020.
So party leaders believe that what happens between tonight's debate and the primary 2 months from tonight could make a big difference 2 years from now in determining whether or not President Trump can count on Florida's 29 electoral votes again. Bret?
Big national issues. Peter Ducey in the debate hall. Peter, thanks. Up next, the panel on a busy news day. This is a Fox News alert updating our top story. Police in Annapolis, Maryland say 5 people are dead tonight. Many others hurt after a shooting in a local newspaper office. Police say they have an adult white male in custody. They say he had what was described as a long gun. This is thought to be, as at this point, one of the deadliest attacks on journalists in U.S. history. We'll have more information as soon as it becomes available. Now let's bring in our panel. From our Washington studio, Byron York, chief political correspondent of the Washington Examiner, Leslie Marshall, syndicated talk radio host, and joining us from New York, Jason Riley, Wall Street Journal columnist and senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Okay, some thoughts about this, the big issue that we often deal with in these shootings. Byron, first to you.
Well, this is the time not to come up with any conclusions about this shooting because we simply don't know what happened. We don't know the identity of the shooter. We don't know the motive. Was this a domestic dispute? Was he a disgruntled employee? Was he just crazy? Was there something political here? We don't know any of that. So the kind of debate that always follows this shooting, it'd be best to just hold off for a while.
Leslie.
I agree with Byron 100% on that. You know, people go to work every day and you don't think that this is the day I'm going to die, and to die in such a heinous manner just must echo the sentiments of applause to the first responders getting there in 60 seconds. God knows how many other lives could have been lost. And also the shock that this was not a semi-automatic weapon. This was a long gun, how much damage was done, and certainly all the damage that's been done to those families that received that horrific phone call that none of us ever wants to get, and that we get so many more of so many days in our nation.
Yeah, Jason, obviously a big issue for the nation. It's a big issue here in Florida. We'll be talking about it tonight. Your thoughts?
We've all worked in newsrooms, Bret. We're all journalists. It really hits home. And I agree with what both Leslie and Byron said. It's too early to draw conclusions. Unfortunately, that's what happens too often. The focus is not on the heroics of the first responders or the grief of the families. Everyone just sort of goes into their corners and pulls out the talking points. And if you've been following Twitter, you know, the president tweeted his condolences and immediately was attacked for doing that, blamed even for doing that. So this isn't the time to do that. You're right. We should at least first find out what happened.
Okay, big news out of Washington today, this hearing in the House Judiciary Committee. Take a listen to one of the exchanges from this afternoon.
I am the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. Okay? I'm not the person doing the redacting. I'm responsible for responding to your concerns as I have. So your statement that I'm personally keeping information from you, trying to conceal information.
You're the boss, Mr. Rosenstein.
That's correct. And my job is to make sure that we respond to your concerns. We have, sir. But your use of this to attack me personally
Why did you
is deeply wrong.
All right, Byron, your thoughts on this hearing and what came out of it?
Well, that was the roughest exchange of the day between Republican Jim Jordan and Rod Rosenstein, in which Jordan and a number of others have complained about redactions that don't seem to make much sense or were not necessary in documents handed over. And Rosenstein essentially said, hey, don't look at me. Important to remember today that the House actually passed with 226 votes a non-binding but sense of the House resolution saying that the Justice Department has been withholding information and that they should turn it over immediately. And while Bob Goodlatte, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, did say that the Justice Department has been performing better on that score lately, there is still a lot that they simply haven't turned over.
We heard, Jason, that Peter Strzok in his testimony had DOJ lawyer there, and he didn't really answer all of the questions, according to people in the room. The president tweeting out today, Peter Strzok worked as the leader of the rigged witch hunt for a long period of time. He got it started and was only fired because the gig was up. But remember, he took his orders from Comey and McCabe, and they took their orders from you-know-who, Mueller, Comey, best friends. Jason, there is a frustration, not only on Capitol Hill, but you can hear it around the country. Your thoughts about all this?
Well, Congress is a co-equal branch of government, Bret, with oversight responsibilities, and some people at Justice seem very slow to understand that and Congress's role here. And when you just tell the congressman about the volumes of documents you sent them, knowing that that's not really what's relevant. It's these redactions that are relevant. Are you turning over the documents that have been asked for? And they're not. And there's very much a frustration among Republicans that Rod Rosenstein has not reined in this investigation, this Mueller investigation, and kept Mueller on track and made sure that he's doing what he was asked to do and not going astray on fishing expeditions. So yes, there is a lot of frustration here.
Leslie, the other big news is this summit upcoming in Helsinki on July 16th between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Here's the president.
It's going to be great. The world has to start getting along. I think we'll be talking about Syria. I think we'll be talking about Ukraine. I think we'll be talking about many other subjects, and we'll see what happens.
I recommend everyone to refrain from using the words breakthrough meetings and so on. I suggest a pragmatic and realistic attitude towards these meetings. Certainly, Russian-American relations have been ready for a number of meetings on various levels long time ago because the bilateral agenda has been demanding it.
Leslie, there are some people that really have a problem with the meeting at all, this summit, but this really set people off. The president tweeting, Russia continues to say they had nothing to do with meddling in our election. Where is the DNC server? Why didn't shady James Comey and now the disgraced FBI agent take and closely examine it? Why isn't Hillary Russia being looked at? So many questions, so much corruption. Thoughts?
I don't know if the president is trying to do what he did with North Korea, which was a photo op that did nothing to benefit the United States and certainly benefited the leader of North Korea, many Americans feel. And I think that's what's going to happen, sadly, with Russia and with this meeting with Putin, Bret, because, again, another photo op. You have the president siding with Putin, who says he didn't meddle. You have his own Department of Homeland Security and other departments and other investigations that have showed contrary what the president is tweeting out. Also, the appearance that he seems to be endorsing Putin's take and reasoning for annexing Crimea, and our allies in the Western world are trying to isolate, not embrace Putin. And I don't think that the president should be meeting with Putin. And quite frankly, again, what are we going in with and what are we getting out of this meeting? We shouldn't be accommodating Putin. It should be the other way around.
All right, Byron.
Well, I think the president takes any opportunity to make his defense in the Trump-Russia affair, but I think on the other side from what Leslie was saying is Trump and Putin could talk about all the very tough things that the president has done as far as Russia is concerned, the sending arms to Ukraine, striking militarily Russia's client in Syria, developing new missiles, developing low-yield nuclear weapons, pushing NATO to spend more money. There are a lot of policy things that Donald Trump has done, in addition to new sanctions, more than the Obama administration put on, that haven't been done before.
All right. Panel, thank you very much. Busy day. Finally tonight, a quick commercial break while I head over to the set for the Fox News debate. Featured two top Republican candidates in the Florida gubernatorial primary, Agriculture Commissioner Adam Putnam and Congressman Ron DeSantis, squaring off on what will be a heated discussion probably on a number of issues, not only for Floridians, but for the country. That's it for us. Fair, balanced, and always unafraid. In the heat of summer, the nation's biggest swing state is up for grabs.
This race is essentially tied.
Republicans in Florida hope to keep control of the governor's mansion heading into 2020. The Sunshine State has been key to deciding presidential elections.
I'm going to win Florida. You can write that down on a piece of paper.
From the hanging chads of 2000 to the nail-biter in 2016.
Slightly better than even chance that Trump wins Florida.
Carl, who's going to win Florida? My gut tells me that it might be him.
Floridians have chosen the winner in all but one presidential election since 1964.
Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States. Now, the Republican candidates for governor face tough questions.
I love you. It's going to be fun. Can you hide somewhere? Can you play dead? Yes.
From a horrific shooting at a Parkland high school.
Enough is enough!
To the border battle in a state filled with immigrants. And an aging population concerned about health care.
They want a place where they can retire and have government off their back.
The Republican nomination could come down to two candidates.
Frontrunner State Agriculture Commissioner Adam Putnam.
I've spent my life fighting back. And as your governor, I won't back down.
A farmer, business owner, and self-proclaimed NRA sellout.
It's important to distinguish between law-abiding citizens who safely and responsibly exercise their Second Amendment rights from the monster who shot up Parkland High School.
And Congressman Ron DeSantis.
We're running and we're going to win this race.
An Iraq war vet and U.S. congressman who has the endorsement of President Trump.
As governor of Florida, you're going to have a relationship with the White House. We have a hurricane, hopefully not. We need aid. I call the president directly. He's going to take my call.
Putnam attacks his opponent as missing in action.
This is a Florida-based race, and Washington is not going to get it done. And dialing in a gubernatorial campaign from out of state, long distance, isn't going to get it done.
DeSantis calls Putnam a career politician who spends more time campaigning and not enough time working for the people of Florida.
If you could campaign your whole life, fine, but that's not the way the world works. And so I think the best way I can be a strong candidate is, yes, campaign, but also do my job and show people that I'm a leader.
Tonight, the two candidates face off right now on America's election headquarters.
Welcome to the Gaylord Palms Resort and Convention Center here in Orlando, and the next in our series of primary debates for 2018. Tonight, the top two Republicans in the race for Florida governor face off. Good evening. I'm Bret Baier.
And I'm Martha McCallum. Before we start tonight, we are still following the tragic events of this afternoon, a shooting at a newsroom in Maryland. The latest that we know is that at least 5 people are dead. Multiple people are injured, and the gunman is in custody.
The people who work to bring you the news became targets today. We still don't know why. It's one of the deadliest attacks ever on U.S. journalists. We will be getting to this topic later in this debate. But first, some other questions facing the candidates, issues key here in Florida and to the nation.
So let's meet them. First, we have Adam Putnam, the Florida Commissioner of Agriculture. Welcome, gentlemen. The rules of the debate are simple. Candidates have 60 seconds to answer the questions, 30 seconds for follow-ups, and 30 seconds if their name is mentioned by the other candidate.
If either candidate goes over their allotted time, they will hear this. And it does set off dogs around the nation thinking it's the doorbell, so we're trying to avoid that. So let's get to it. Commissioner Putnam, Justice Anthony Kennedy's retirement announcement could have a major effect on many issues, considering that he was the swing vote in the U.S. Supreme Court. Abortion may be one of the biggest. Both of you here on stage said that you would sign the heartbeat bill here in Florida, which would ban abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected. So the question is, that is viewed as a direct challenge to Roe versus Wade. Given that, do you believe that the next Supreme Court justice should vote to overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, first of all, our prayers are with the good people in Annapolis, and we're certainly grateful for the law enforcement officers who responded so rapidly. Welcome to Florida, Bret. Welcome to Florida, Martha. And what an exciting time to be in front of such a live audience of 1,000 Florida Republicans. It's completely different than a Washington, D.C. studio, and I just want to say, welcome to Florida, Congressman. It is, I am thrilled. I am thrilled that President Trump has a second opportunity to remake the U.S. Supreme Court with a constitutionalist justice. This is going to be exciting for decades to come. We look forward to seeing who it is. It will be, if they're anywhere near as good as Justice Gorsuch has been, it's an exciting time for America. Yes, I've said I would sign the heartbeat bill. Yes, we need a constitutionalist on the bench, someone who is not going to try and make law from the bench, but someone who will abide by our Constitution and protect and defend life.
So that means, yes, it should be a justice who overturns Roe v. Wade.
We should have a strict constitutionalist on the bench, someone who recognizes the individual rights in this country, someone who also recognizes that our founders intended that you defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm honored to have the support of the Florida Family Action Council in the governor's race here in Florida, because they know that as governor, I will always pursue a pro-life agenda here in Florida as Florida's next governor.
Okay, Congressman DeSantis, same question to you, considering the Supreme Court nominee that will be up here. Your question, would it be someone to overturn Roe v. Wade?
So I'm proud to have the endorsement of President Donald Trump in this race. And I think that Donald Trump has done a better job appointing judges to both the U.S. Supreme Court and the Appeals Court than any other president in my lifetime, including one of my heroes, Ronald Reagan. So God bless Donald Trump for doing that. And I think the opportunity to replace Justice Kennedy is really a historic opportunity. It should be a constitutionalist in the mold of Justice Antonin Scalia or Clarence Thomas, who understands the proper role of the court is to apply the law and Constitution as it's actually written, not to legislate from the bench, not to impose a judge's philosophy on the rest of the country. And I say there's an analog here in Florida. The next governor, in all likelihood, is going to have 3 appointments to our state Supreme Court, which is a historically liberal court. They're activists. They legislate from the bench. I can tell you this. I am best positioned to identify those candidates for nomination to the state Supreme Court who are going to apply the law faithfully and will not be judicial activists. If we get it right, we can end judicial activism in Florida for a generation.
Congressman DeSantis, today President Trump announced that he will meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin for a summit on July 16th in Helsinki, Finland. He sent a tweet this morning saying, quote, Russia continues to say they had nothing to do with meddling in our election. But Vice President Pence, Secretary Pompeo, President Trump's own intelligence agencies have stated that interference did in fact take place. So who is right?
So here's the thing. There's a difference between what Russia may have done. I think they're always up to no good, and I think that they tried to do cyber stuff in our election. But that's much different than saying that there was collusion between Trump's campaign and Russia. There was no collusion, and I've been on the front lines not only demonstrating that in the Congress, but uncovering the anti-Trump bias that really permeated the FBI during critical junctures of this thing. You got the guy that opened up the collusion investigation, Peter Strzok. He opens up the investigation. A week later, he said, no, Trump won't be president. We'll stop him. And then a week later, he texted his lover and said, we need an insurance policy in case this guy wins. So I've been one of the few who were out there from the very beginning. When Comey was fired, I was right there saying that was the right thing to do. When Mueller was appointed, I said there was no basis. In fact, I was on your show hours after Mueller was appointed. I didn't have my finger in the wind. I wasn't waiting for what the polls or the media said. I knew it was wrong, and I stood for what I believe was right.
Commissioner Putnam, as you just heard several times, President Trump has endorsed your opponent. Why is the president wrong?
Well, first of all, I know that the president is going to more than hold his own in a summit against Putin, and I'm proud of him for taking it on, and I'm proud of his agenda to make America great again. But I'm running a Florida First campaign. I care more about the schools in Washington County than what's going on in Washington, D.C. I care more about what's going on in Ruskin, Florida, with congestion and infrastructure and the quality of our water than I do about what's going on in Russia, and I care more about the other St. Petersburg, Florida. A Florida First agenda is going to put vocational and technical training back into our schools. It is going to increase the types of career opportunities that keep our brightest and best here in Florida and make us a magnet for talent from around the world. That's the job of the next governor of the great state, to put the third largest state in a position to help make America great again by our strength here in Florida.
Well, Commissioner, considering all of that, tonight, are you prepared to endorse President Trump in 2020?
Most assuredly, and I look forward to campaigning with him as governor of Florida.
Well, that would be the first time you ever campaigned with him, because when Donald Trump was trying to win Florida in 2016, Adam Putnam did not attend a single rally with him. You couldn't find Adam Putnam if you had a search warrant.
Commissioner, do you want to respond?
Look, I support our president. I support our president's agenda for our country. I support the fact that all of us paid less in taxes this year because of Trump's tax cuts. I love the fact that he's taking it to our so-called trading partners to defend Florida farmers, to fight for American jobs. I love the fact that he went to Singapore to meet with the North Korean government so that he can denuclearize that peninsula. And I love the fact that he's getting another Supreme Court justice. And I love that together we all get to watch America get better by the day while Hillary explains the title of her book, What Happened? What happens is she lost. That's what happened.
All right, so Congressman DeSantis, as you pointed out, you have the support and endorsement of President Trump. But according to two recent polls, your opponent has the support of nearly twice as many Florida Republicans as you do. You have made a lot of appearances on our network. That is true. Leading Commissioner Putnam to say that you're running this race from a D.C. TV studio. You also have more than 42% of your campaign contributions coming from out of state, from people who cannot vote for you. So how do you respond to what he's charging here?
Well, look, I mean, I think he said that I'm not, haven't spent enough time in Florida. The fact is, I was born and raised in Florida, grew up in Pinellas County. My Little League team went to the Little League World Series representing Florida on that world stage. I went to Dunedin High School, worked $6 an hour to try to make something for myself. I didn't have anything handed to me. But the truth is, there are definitely times when I wish I could have spent more time in Florida. For example, the Christmas of 2006, I wasn't home with my family. I was in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, at the terrorist detention facility, not as a detainee, as an officer. And then the next Christmas in 2007, I was in Fallujah, Iraq, working for the commanding officer of SEAL Team 1. Would have loved to have been in Florida with my family. But sometimes duty calls, and sometimes you got to step up and do what's right. And some of the things that I've been doing lately to support our president's agenda, just this morning, I was in Washington doing my job, grilling Rod Rosenstein about why there was anti-Trump bias in the FBI and DOJ, why they're not coming clean with us, and why they were monitoring the Trump campaign. So that's what I'm paid to do. So I'm going to do my job and continue to run the race. But at the end of the day, both of the things are very, very important. I'm going to keep doing both.
But what about the point that 42% of your contributions come from out of state?
Well, with Florida, you got to understand, there's a lot of people who spend half the year in Florida, so they have an interest in doing that. A lot of these people that they talk about are big supporters of President Donald Trump. Donald Trump himself spends a lot of time in Florida. He's not necessarily a Florida resident. And I think what's going to happen because of the tax cuts we passed, getting rid of the subsidy for high-tax states, I think you're going to see people reevaluate and say, why do I have this business in Illinois or Connecticut? I can bring it down to Florida. And I think you're going to see us have a great opportunity to do better in finance, technology, and manufacturing if we have the right policies and if we build off the great success of Governor Rick Scott.
Commissioner Putnam, you know, in recent weeks we've seen a real rise in incivility, specifically around the issue of border policy. Just last week, Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi was harassed at a movie theater here. I'm sure you could rattle off specific examples of Democratic incivility. But many Democrats and even a few Republicans say that President Trump set the tone here at the beginning. During the campaign, you were one of those critical Republicans. Congressman DeSantis mentioned it there, but you did call Trump in the campaign vile, obscene, dishonorable. So does he deserve some of the blame, as his critics suggest, in setting the tone for this moment?
I did not call the president those things, and I support the president. And the president did not set the tone that the Democrats are trying to blame him for. They ought to look at some of the things that Maxine Waters has said over the years, not just recently. Look at many of the things that have been said. But look, your question about out-of-state influence in Florida, the real danger isn't what's going on this stage. It's the fact that George Soros and Tom Steyer are trying to hijack Florida politics. And it's not because they care about how long we spend in traffic on I-4. And it's not because they care about the quality of our schools in Northwest Florida. And it's not because they care about the quality of water in Lake Okeechobee. It's because they care about one thing and one thing only, and that is defeating our president and taking back the White House. And that won't happen in Florida, and that won't happen on our watch. We can't let the left hijack Florida's politics, Florida's governor's mansion, Florida's cabinet, or Florida's legislature. Don't let it happen, Republican Party of Florida.
Well, let me just respond with terms of, because it's personal. I was about a year ago on the baseball field in Alexandria, Virginia, and I was throwing balls to Steve Scalise, who was playing second base, and Jeff Duncan and I, who was playing short, decided we'd try to beat D.C. traffic, and we left probably about 5 minutes before Steve was shot. And as we were leaving, we were getting into a car, and a man who we didn't know came up to us and said, "Are those Republicans on the field?" We didn't think anything of it. We're like, "Yeah, it's the Republican team." We pull away. 2 minutes later, he grabs a rifle, sets up on the third base line. I would have thank God I wasn't there, because I would have been in that line, and he shoots Steve, and he would have shot 10 or 15 Republicans. And so he was motivated by anti-Trump rage. He was a raving lunatic. But here's the thing. If there were a Fox News viewing Trump supporter who did that for Democrats, the media would view it as the biggest thing in world history. There, they swept it under the rug. People didn't even talk about it after a week. So this incivility, I don't think it's a two-way street. I don't blame Donald Trump for that. I blame that guy and all his left-wing friends for whipping up this frenzy. And I'm leading the fight right now in Congress to censure Maxine Waters for her conduct.
Congressman, you go back through the course of the election. There are those who say that it's fine to point the finger at Maxine Waters and whoever else you want to and say that that's uncivil behavior, and I think a lot of people would agree with you. But they say the president is the president of the United States, and he has a role to play in restoring that civility. Does he?
So here's the issue, and I deal with this all the time. In Washington, in the country, Trump has almost the entire media against him. Fake news day after day after day. He's got the entire Democratic Party after him. He's got the lobbyists after him. He's got the bureaucracy after him. And he's got some Republicans who come after him to kneecap him. And so he is under an attack like no president has faced, and he is standing tall for us. He is working hard. So the last thing I want to do is go out there and lob hand grenades at the president. I think we need to support the president, understand what he's up against, and understand he's facing opposition unlike any other president we've seen.
Commissioner, you want to respond?
We have lost a number of law enforcement officers in the state of Florida this year. And I think that it's important that we remember the things that were said by the last president that undermined the men and women in law enforcement, that questioned their commitment. They stand on that thin blue line between order and chaos. And I believe that anyone who wants to point the finger at President Trump needs to look at the comments that were made by President Obama. They were anti-law enforcement, anti-sheriff, anti-cop, and make absolutely certain that everyone in Florida know that the next governor will always have their back. This method of incivility did not begin with President Trump. It's only reported by the left-wing media because they want to undermine our president and the conservative movement.
All right. So meanwhile, the debate over children being separated from their parents at the border has reached a fever pitch, and Florida is right in the middle of it all. Peter Ducey reports.
Where are the children?
The Sunshine State is in the spotlight because the second largest temporary shelter hosting border crossing kids split up from their parents is in Homestead.
We want to see these children get back with their parents.
But immigration authorities in Florida have been busy long before the family separation issue boiled over. There are 760,000 unauthorized immigrants in Florida, third most in America.
We cannot have policies in place that encourage others to undergo the same dangerous journey that's happening now, because that's inhumane.
Since President Trump took office, ICE arrests in Florida are up 76%, far outpacing the 30% uptick nationally.
Immigration is protecting our borders is one of the primary things that we're all focused on. And we have our military that's overseas fighting that front for us, but we have to do it right here.
Experts say visitors who overstay their visas make up most of Florida's undocumented aliens, and that orders from D.C. to be stricter when enforcing immigration laws play well in parts of the peninsula.
You have a significant proportion of the population, non-Latino population, which is largely seeing immigration through the eyes of the administration.
Most of the talk about the border these days is focused on California and Arizona and Texas, but Florida has more than 1,300 miles of coastline. Thousands of illegal immigrants are apprehended at the coastal border in this country every year, and you can't keep them out with a wall. Bret and Martha?
Thanks to Peter Ducey. Congressman DeSantis, as Peter was reporting, right now there are approximately 1,200 migrant children being housed in 3 detention facilities here in the state of Florida. Should these separations ever have been used by the administration as a deterrent to illegal immigration, or was that a mistake?
Well, here's the thing. I think that the folks who come illegally, if they come with minors, they should be reunited with their families, but it should be in their home country. You should not come illegally. We got a lot of things we need to do on the border here, and this is a big point of disagreement between Commissioner Putnam and me. When he was in the Congress, he joined with Nancy Pelosi as the only Republican in Florida to vote against allowing military on our border to help secure it. When he was ag commissioner, he endorsed the Schumer-Obama Gang of 8 immigration amnesty, the biggest amnesty in history. It would have lowered wages for American workers, and it would have created an incentive to come illegally. And when we had a chance in Florida to do E-Verify, which is the #1 thing you can do to shut off the job spigot, it would raise wages, increase the rule of law, and be good for taxpayers. He twisted arms in the state Senate. He helped kill it behind the scenes. So I appreciate he's saying to put Florida first, but he didn't put Florida first there. He put his big donors who want cheap foreign labor ahead of the interest of our citizens.
Commissioner Putnam, I want to give you the full time to respond to a full question. Your opponent in an ad calls you Amnesty Adam.
Well, that's rich for somebody who voted in a agricultural bill to give food stamps to illegal immigrants. But look,
oh, that's not true. You know that.
Here's the deal. Here's the deal. Let's talk about Florida. Our immigration laws need to be enforced. The president has laid out 4 pillars: secure our borders, end the visa lottery, reform chain migration, and bring a permanent resolution to the DACA children. Washington, yet again, as recently as this week, Washington, yet again, let us down and let the president down by not passing us a fix to immigration. And here in Florida, our 21 million Floridians are paying $100 million a year to feed, clothe, and house criminal illegal aliens in our prison system. That will end. That has ended. That will end as part of my Secure Florida First agenda. The sheriff you saw in the clip has endorsed me. Ron, your sheriff has endorsed me. And I'm excited about 45 sheriffs who have endorsed me because they know both of our records and they know who is best for securing our borders and keeping Floridians safe.
Congressman? Well, he didn't refute any of the criticisms because they're true. And the fact of the matter is, if I'm governor, I will work hard and I will sign E-Verify into law here in the state of Florida. He won't do that because the big ag donors that fund his campaign want that cheap foreign labor. that lowers wages for Floridians. It's bad for the rule of law. It's not good for taxpayers. And for him to say that I somehow supported benefits for illegal, that is dead wrong. I voted against a voted farm bill that had Obama's food stamp program codified. That was a terrible bill. I was right to vote no on that. So what he's saying is not true. The criticisms of him, he is weak on the border, he's been weak on illegal immigration, and he supported the Obama-Schumer Gang of Eight immigration amnesty, which is a terrible piece of legislation.
I want to give you a chance to respond, but I want to redirect a little bit. Commissioner, you did endorse former Florida Governor Jeb Bush for president in 2016. Many people thought a part of the reason he lost was because of the immigration issue. Do you still think he was right?
Look, he was my friend and our governor, and was a great governor. And so, but let's talk about the immigration situation. Yes. I mean, I am proud of what he did for our state. He was focused on Florida. I am focused on Florida. My Secure Florida First plan will reinstate the relationship with ICE that went away under the Obama administration so that they will be detained and deported by the feds and not on Florida taxpayers' dimes. I am supported by the law enforcement, PBA, FOP, and 45 sheriffs because they've seen both records and endorsed me to be the next governor to keep Floridians safe. That's what a Florida First agenda is, and that's what the governor of Florida should be focused on.
Gentlemen, thank you. Stand by if you would. Breaking news unfolding just hours ahead of this debate. Yet another deadly shooting, as we mentioned, in our nation this afternoon. Today's tragedy brings us to another hotly debated issue that's left deep scars here in Florida. Guns.
We will have that and much more as we continue the debate live tonight from Orlando.